The first time I realized my family had been lying to me for years, I was sitting cross-legged on my mother's living room floor on Christmas Eve, holding a stack of old photo albums that smelled like dust, cinnamon, and mildew. Everyone was in the kitchen laughing too loudly, the way people do when they don't want silence to expose them. I was flipping through pictures from Christmases going back 20 years when I noticed something I couldn't unsee. In photo after photo, at some point in the day, the same people vanished. Not everyone, just a pattern. My mother, my Aunt Teresa, my grandfather when he was still alive. Sometimes my older cousin Daniel. They'd be in the morning pictures around the tree, then gone in the afternoon, then back by dinner with red eyes, forced smiles, or coats still on indoors. I checked another album, then another. Different years, same gap. And in one photo from 2004, taken in front of my grandmother's fireplace, I saw my mother hugging someone whose face had been neatly cut out with scissors. I stared at that empty shape where a person used to be, and for the first time in my life, Christmas at my grandmother's house stopped feeling warm. It felt staged. I'm 32 now, and until that night I would have told you my family was the kind people envy. Loud, imperfect, but solid. We lived in Ohio, all within 40 minutes of each other. Every Christmas Eve was at Grandma Elena's old brick house. Same food, same ornaments, same terrible playlist of Frank Sinatra and Mariah Carey. My parents divorced when I was 10, but even that somehow folded into the holiday routine. My dad came by early. My mom stayed late. My Aunt Teresa brought too many presents. My cousin Daniel got drunk and sentimental by 9. I grew up believing the biggest drama in our family was money, old grudges, and my grandfather's temper before he died. I believed we were honest in the way families claim to be honest, meaning we lied politely and called it protection. My grandmother had passed 2 years earlier, and this was our first Christmas at my mother's house instead of hers. Maybe that's why the albums were out. Maybe grief rearranges things until secrets slip loose. At first I told myself the missing people in the photos probably stepped out to smoke, run an errand, pick someone up. But the cutout face bothered me. It was too deliberate. People don't erase someone from a picture unless they're trying to erase them from memory too. So I took the photo to the kitchen and asked as casually as I could, "Who was this?" The room changed. It was subtle, but I felt it. My mother stopped stirring the gravy. Aunt Teresa looked down at her wine glass. Daniel glanced at my mom before answering, which told me everything. "No idea," he said. That was my first real clue, because Daniel is a terrible liar. My mother took the picture from me and smiled in that calm, terrifying way she has when she's decided something is over. "Old photos get damaged," she said. "Go set the table." That should have been the end of it. In my family, people have survived by respecting shut doors. But something about the synchronized discomfort hit a nerve. My grandmother was gone. My grandfather was gone. If there was a story buried in those albums, there were fewer and fewer people left who could tell it. So after dinner, while everyone watched a movie in the den, I went back to the albums. I started organizing the photos by year and writing notes in my phone like I was building a timeline. In 1998, my mother and Teresa disappeared between 2 and 5 p.m. In 2001, same thing. In 2007, Daniel disappeared with them. In 2012, after Grandpa had died, my mother left alone and came back an hour later looking like she'd been crying. I found a receipt tucked into one album from a flower shop dated December 24, 2012. The shop was in a town 30 minutes away. I'd never heard of anyone we knew living there. Question, where were they going? Partial answer, somewhere specific, every Christmas. New question, who were the flowers for? The next day I called Daniel. He didn't answer at first, which made me call again. When he finally picked up, he sounded exhausted. "You need to let it go." That sentence lit me up inside. If there was nothing, there'd be nothing to let go. "Who was cut out of that picture?" I asked. Long silence. Then he said, "Ask your mom." I did. Then there's your answer. Daniel. He exhaled hard. I'm serious, Mara. Some things were kept quiet for a reason. For whose benefit? He didn't respond. That night, I drove to the flower shop from the receipt. It was closed for the holiday, but through the window I could see faded sympathy arrangements in a cooler and a woman mopping the floor in back. I knocked until she opened the door a crack. I showed her the receipt photo on my phone and asked if she remembered who flowers from this order might have gone to. She squinted at it. That's old. I know. She hesitated, then said, We used to deliver to St. Bartholomew's Care Home out on Mercer Road. A lot of Christmas arrangements went there. Care Home. That answer should have settled nothing, but instead it gave the mystery shape. Someone in my family had spent years visiting a person in a care facility on Christmas. Someone important enough to hide, not important enough to acknowledge. The day after Christmas, I drove to Mercer Road. St. Bartholomew's wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a modern nursing home. It was an older private facility. Brick, quiet, half hidden behind winter bare trees. The kind of place where forgotten people outlived their visitors. At the front desk, I made up a story about looking for a relative and gave my grandmother's last name. The receptionist checked her computer and shook her head. No current residents with that name. Former residents? She smiled professionally. I can't provide that. I was about to leave when an older nurse passing through the lobby heard my last name and stopped. Elena Vargas? She asked. My stomach dropped. She was my grandmother. The nurse's expression changed, not suspicious exactly, more like sad recognition. I remember her. I took a step closer. She came here? The nurse looked toward the desk, then lowered her voice. Every Christmas, for years. Who did she visit? The nurse hesitated too long. I really shouldn't. That was when I knew there absolutely was someone. I gave her my number, expecting nothing. But 2 nights later, she called me from a blocked number and said, If you want answers, ask for Isabel. Isabel who? She never used a last name with us. My heart started pounding. Who is she? The nurse was quiet for a second. A woman your family loved very much, and one they were afraid of. Then she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, repeating the name like it might unlock something in me. Isabel. I knew no Isabel. No family friend, no cousin, no aunt, nothing. Yet somehow this stranger was tied to every Christmas of my life. I went to my mother the next morning. I didn't ease into it. I said, Who is Isabel? I have never seen color leave a person's face so fast. My mother was standing at the sink rinsing coffee mugs. One slipped from her hand and cracked in the basin. She didn't even react to the sound. Where did you hear that name? So she's real. Mara. No, don't do that. Don't turn this around on me. Who is she? My mother braced both hands on the counter like she needed support. You need to stop digging. Why? Because the truth is ugly? Because you don't understand what it cost? That line hit me harder than if she'd yelled. Cost who? Cost what? For a second I thought she was going to tell me. Instead she said, Isabel was someone your grandmother cared about. That's all. I almost believed her. Almost. But then I asked the one question that came naturally. If she was just someone Grandma cared about, why cut her out of family photos? And my mother started crying. Not graceful crying, not movie crying. Real crying, angry and humiliated, like I had cornered her with a ghost. That was my first major revelation. Isabel wasn't just some family friend. She had once been close enough to stand in front of the fireplace with my mother's arms around her. Close enough to belong in our home. Which meant her disappearance had been intentional. From there, everything got worse. I called Aunt Teresa, who denied knowing anything, but then accidentally referred to Isabel as she before claiming she'd guessed. Daniel texted me, "Don't ask Teresa anything else." Dad, who was only married into the family for 12 years, surprised me by saying, "Your mother's family had a tragedy before you were born. That's all I know." He wouldn't say more. A tragedy. Another partial answer. Another new question. I went back through Grandma's things in storage. At the bottom of a cedar chest, I found a Christmas card addressed in my grandmother's handwriting. Para mi hija, for my daughter. It was never mailed. There was no name on the envelope. Inside was a photograph of the Virgin Mary and a note, "I will come on the 24th, as long as they let me." My daughter. I sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit with my hands shaking. I only knew of one daughter my grandmother had. My mother. But my grandmother would never have written her own daughter a card like that and hidden it in a chest. So I made the leap. Isabel wasn't a friend, she was family. When I confronted Daniel with that theory, he finally broke. We met in his truck outside a gas station because, in his words, "I don't want this conversation in a place with walls." He gripped the steering wheel and said, "I thought she was our aunt." I turned to him so fast I smacked my shoulder on the door. Thought? That's what they told me when I was a kid. Great aunt, distant aunt, something like that. I only went once when I was maybe 13. She was already in the home. She kept calling your mom by a nickname nobody else used. "Your grandmother brought gifts?" Teresa cried the whole drive back, and after that I was told never to ask again. So she was your mom's sister? That's what I assumed. For a few hours that explanation felt complete. A hidden sister. Mental illness, maybe. Institutionalization, shame, old-school family secrecy. It fit too well. I hated it, but it fit. I thought I had the whole story. That was the trap. Because 3 days later, I found my mother's birth certificate while helping her look for tax papers. And listed under mother, Elena Vargas. Listed under father, Rafael Vargas, my grandfather. Except my mother had once told me she was born 2 years after my grandparents married in Texas. The document I held was issued in New Mexico, and the date of issue had been amended. I requested older records online, then spent a week half sick with dread until a certified copy arrived. The original certificate named Elena Vargas as mother. No father listed. My mother wasn't Rafael's biological daughter. Everything tilted. I drove straight to St. Bartholomew's and begged the receptionist to let me speak to someone who remembered Isabel. The same older nurse met me outside during her break. I showed her the birth certificate. She looked at it once and said very softly, "Then no one told you." Told me what? She took a long breath. Isabel was Elena's first daughter. Your mother was Isabel's baby. I actually laughed when she said it. Not because it was funny, but because my brain rejected it. No, that doesn't make sense. She was 16, the nurse said. That's what Elena told us. Isabel had the baby very young. There was violence at home, pressure from the church. Your grandmother took the baby and raised her as her own. Then Isabel had a breakdown. The family sent her away. I couldn't feel my hands. My mother wasn't my grandmother's daughter. She was her granddaughter. And Isabel, erased from the photos, hidden in a care home, visited only in secret on Christmas, was my mother's real mother. Every single story I had grown up with changed shape in one sentence. I didn't go home. I drove around for 2 hours, replaying birthdays, funerals, inside jokes, all of it. Why Christmas? Why only then? Why keep visiting if they were willing to erase her? The answer came from Teresa, finally, after I showed up at her apartment and refused to leave. She let me in looking 10 years older than she had at Christmas. "I'm tired," she said, "so I'm going to tell you the part no one ever tells right." We sat at her kitchen table, She didn't look at me while she spoke. Isabel was my older sister. She was brilliant, funny, reckless. And yes, she got pregnant at 16. But that's not the whole truth. Our father, your so-called grandfather, beat her for it, beat her badly. He was obsessed with respectability. Elena was terrified of him. After the baby was born, they told everyone the child was Elena's late surprise. They moved for a while so no one would ask questions. My mouth went dry. Did my mother know? Teresa nodded. Not at first. She was told when she was 14. And Isabel? She tried to take her back. That sentence landed like glass breaking. Teresa finally met my eyes. She came to the house on Christmas Eve. That's why Christmas. It was the day she always came back. Sometimes calm, sometimes not. One year she grabbed your mother and tried to leave through the backyard. Raphael hit her. The police were called. After that, she was diagnosed, institutionalized, sedated half her life. Your grandmother never forgave herself. So every Christmas she visited Isabel. Secretly. She made us go because she said if we let her be forgotten, then we'd be killing her twice. I could barely speak. And the photos? Raphael cut her out. Everyone he could find. That was the second and biggest twist because suddenly the villain I thought was just a strict, dead grandfather became the architect of a family lie that lasted generations. But the wound was wider than him. Everyone had helped maintain it, even out of guilt, even out of love. The hardest part came that night when I confronted my mother. She opened the door before I knocked, like she'd been waiting. I said, "You knew." She didn't deny it. She just stepped aside and let me in. We sat in the dark living room with only the tree lights on. I told her Teresa had explained everything. My mother folded into herself, arms wrapped tight around her ribs. "I met her when I was little," she said. "They told me she was sick and dangerous, but every Christmas Grandma took me with her until I was about 11. Isabel would hold my face and cry like she was memorizing me. She used to say, 'I'm your mother,' and then Grandma would tell me she was confused." Her voice cracked. "When I was 14, Grandma told me the truth because Isabel had gotten worse and started forgetting names. Grandma said I had a right to know before it was too late." "Too late for what?" "To hear it from her." I swallowed. "Did you?" My mother nodded. "Once. She had a clear day. She told me about my birth, about singing to me, about the yellow blanket I was wrapped in, details nobody else knew. I believed her instantly. I remember feeling like the floor disappeared. Why didn't you tell me?" She closed her eyes. "Because I was ashamed of being ashamed. Because I loved the woman who raised me and resented the woman who gave birth to me and hated myself for both things. Because when you grow up inside a lie that old, telling the truth feels like detonating a bomb under everyone's feet." I asked the question that had haunted me from the beginning. "Is she still alive?" A long silence. Then my mother whispered, "No, she died 3 years ago, on Christmas morning." I stared at her. 3 years ago? The same year Grandma died? "She died 2 weeks later," my mother said. "I think she gave up." For a minute, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the tree lights humming faintly. Then she stood, went to a hall closet and brought back a box I had never seen. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some written by my grandmother to Isabel. Some by Isabel to my mother, though most had never been sent. There were drawings, church bulletins, pressed flowers, and one photo untouched by scissors. In it, a teenage girl with dark curls stood in the snow, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. She was looking straight at the camera with a fierce, defiant expression I recognized immediately. She had my mother's face. And mine. The aftermath didn't look dramatic from the outside. Nobody got arrested. No wills were contested. No public scene tore the family apart. It was quieter than that, which somehow made it sadder. My mother started therapy at 58. Teresa stopped speaking about Raphael as if he'd been merely difficult and started calling him what he was. Daniel admitted he'd always suspected there was abuse and hated himself for not asking sooner. I spent months sorting through records, letters, and memories, building Isabel back into existence piece by piece. We had her name added to the family headstone beside my grandmother's, because my mother said if Elena spent her life trying to make up for what she'd allowed, the least we could do was stop hiding the daughter she lost. The next Christmas, we did something none of us had ever done. We went to the cemetery in the morning, not secretly, not in shifts, all together. My mother brought white roses. Teresa brought the old photo in a frame. I brought the yellow baby blanket, which had been in the box all along. We stood there in the cold while my mother talked out loud to a woman she had been taught to fear, then mourn, then hide, and finally claim. "I'm sorry it took me this long," she said. I had expected some kind of release, some movie moment where everything healed at once. That's not what happened. What happened was smaller and more human. My mother cried. Teresa held her. Daniel brushed snow off the headstone with his glove, and I realized family history isn't only what gets passed down, it's also what gets cut out, renamed, buried, and still somehow survives. When we got back to the house, I opened one of the albums and slid Isabel's uncut photo into the empty plastic sleeve where it should have always been. For years, there had been this blank shape in our family story, this carefully carved-out absence everyone orbited without naming. Now when I look at that page, I don't see the whole anymore. I see the person they tried to erase. And I think the cruelest lie my family ever told wasn't that Isabel didn't exist. It was that forgetting her would keep us safe. It didn't. It only made sure the truth waited for Christmas.